vigorous and healthy sourdough starter is the foundation for making consistently tasty sourdough bread. A sourdough starter is a fermented mix of flour and water. It is a living culture that contains wild yeast and good bacteria. The wild yeast metabolizes sugars in flour and produces carbon dioxide, which leavens the dough. Sourdough is the oldest method of leavening bread, and sourdough cultures can live for very long periods of time when taken care of, and they're often passed down through generations. Sourdough starters are living things. They need to be used and cared for in order to thrive. When kept at room temperature, a starter needs to be fed about once every 12 hours. When kept in a refrigerator, your starter goes into a dormant stage, and you can keep it for longer stretches of time without feeding. You can also dehydrate the culture to preserve it for long-term storage. While there are many different methods of keeping a sourdough starter, there are a few basic guidelines that apply across the board. Your feeding ratio should always be at least 1 part sourdough starter to 1 part flour and 1 part water. You can increase the amount of flour and water, but you do want to make sure that they are both equal to the amount of sourdough starter that you have. For example, if you have 25 grams of sourdough starter, you want to feed it at least 25 grams of unbleached flour and at least 25 grams of filtered water. I personally eyeball my feedings, and I tend to overfeed a bit, which does lead to longer fermentation times, but it also ensures that my starter is well fed. If you choose to measure, it's always the most accurate if you measure by weight. When feeding your starter, you can use any type of flour as long as it is unbleached. You should also always use filtered water. A healthy and vigorous starter should at least double in size in 4 to 6 hours after being fed. If you use your starter before it peaks and begins to fall, it will result in a milder flavor of bread, while a starter that is at its peak will result in a more sour loaf. There are a variety of different methods to discarding your sourdough starter, and a few methods that don't require discard at all. I personally love to use my discard in recipes. There are many amazing recipes out there, and I will be sure to link one in the description below. I keep my sourdough in this large crock so that I am able to grow it without discarding until I have enough to make a big recipe. After doing a big discard, I am always sure to reserve a small amount of the mother culture to keep my sourdough starter alive. At this point, I will wash the container that I'm keeping my sourdough starter in, and then I'll start to grow it back using the small amount of mother culture that I've saved. Thank you so much for watching today. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss another video.